Because we certainly do. Our health exists outside ourselves. You know this? Do you know this? Yes? Our health exists outside ourselves? Give us an example, someone who believes this. Give me an example, Ned.
If we focus on our illness, it will never leave us. If we keep it inside of us, the illness, if we hang out with that 1% or 3% of disease in our life, it becomes our whole life. Whereas if we get outside of ourselves, our health blossoms. Whether it's by focusing on other people or a project or whatever, the minute we forget about our dis-ease, our health flourishes.
Yes, because there's no such thing as negation, and hopefully the person's feeling ease within themselves rather than something else. Okay, and one more thing that Ned just said to everybody was that it seems like the process of being outward more is creating a greater sense of ease, and that's true. In those subcultures that have things in the culture that's drawing the person out of themselves, let's say it's a family, let's say it's a pet, and the person's petting an animal, or the person's connected to some higher purpose outside themselves, generally there's an energy that's drawing the person out of themselves, and this is creating wellness, actually. Because if somebody is sort of feeling upset about something, it's generally they implode. They're imploding into themselves. Alright, has everybody got this about negation? Tanya?
Something that
Tanya?
when my daughter gets a big pretty surprised. Like the child would go up to the radio or the TV or something, place now. She would say, she didn't ever say, don't do that. She'd say, that's not for baby. You know, at some point in time, the baby will be able to do that. At the present time, it's not for her. I really impressed me.
Yes,
I was surprised that she was so confused.
Yeah. Okay. So there are advertisements out there that are teaching people, you know, how to get all kinds of things, actually. And because of the language that's being used, that people are living the language. If they're reading it, if it's there, they're reading it. Going into town yesterday, we saw an advertisement on the side of the road. Do you remember what it was? It was something that was involving negation again. The main thing was that anybody that would see the sign, there was certainly not a flower there. It was something that was real aversive, actually. You know, if we make sense of it, I had to go through the aversiveness of the language. So,
on the library the other day in Hammond, there's a big sign that says, ignorance is not bliss.
yes.
Oh, yes, that's
There's illiterate.
That's it.
Illiterate.
Race illiteracy.
Race literacy.
Yes.
Ignorance is not bliss.
Yeah.
How about stress relief?
I called him last night and show me. It's just a guy standing there with a sign with red letters and he goes, show me. He puts it down and flashed it, show me. And flashed again. And it was so visual and audio. Show me. And then they show me. And then the pronunciation, show me, then how to say it. And it would just hit all my senses the whole time. Like the movement, the letters, and the sound. And I thought that was a very impeccable commercial.
Yes, okay, that's excellent. So what if the commercial was like that, really impeccable in this way, yet the language was coming from some physicians who want you to come to their practice, and the physicians are saying, learn to see the sickness, consult your local physician. So, it's all about learning to see something, and I think, as Ned was saying, learn to see the wellness inside self. Learn to see what about self is well, and to focus on how well I am. This is a language that's to do with that, actually. Okay, so there's going to be an assignment that you'll be doing during this next month, and one of the assignments is to use the language of peace to reframe. Actually, that assignment is right in the very front here. So the first exercise that you're going to be doing over this next month is the first exercise, apply the ionophoric theory to a newspaper article to determine the degree of whole brain functioning. So you'll pick an article out, and this journalist will be reporting to you something, whatever that is. You'll be able to determine the degree of whole brain functioning that the journalist has used in representing the story. So you'll look at the words, you'll look at the content, and you'll see to what degree it's positive and leading to resourceful, outcome-framed orientation. If you turn to page 5, Roman numerals, you'll see a way to look at the article. You can look at the article and you can see to what degree the content of the article is positive, pleasant, outcome framed, involving choice and resourceful. If it's an advertisement or something like that, you could probably do this with an ad on TV too. If you want to write that up, it's possible. You would want to see that, you would want to listen to the voice and hear that the voice was resonant, rhythmic, and slightly slurred is kind of a little bit more pleasant, rather than if it was blaring, or if the rhythm was uneven, or if the cadence of the voice was clipped. If the cadence of the voice is clipped, generally there's a sense of the possibility of aversion being there. If three of these things, if one thing in the content is negative, if the content is negative and the voice is blaring, and you notice that the body gestures are abrupt and kind of away from, then you can know for sure that person's coming from aversive physiology.
Why then are those car commercials constantly used when they scream? They scream at you. They're so abrasive, so irritating. And the advertisers will tell you they weren't. You remember, but because they irritate you so badly that you remember it?
Yes, because it crosses a threshold. That's right.
Same with furniture.
Yeah, furniture people and the car people.
Yes.
So it's really all this bad stuff done on purpose so that you'll remember it.
Yes. Yes. Because when you were spanked for something one day, I don't know if everybody probably had that experience. I don't know. You really remembered, right? Because of course we can remember things this way too. However, I would say this is a primitive way. This is a primitive level of consciousness that we're operating on. When you're operating at that level,
people that they were addressing are primitive.
Not only that, but
it's the motivating force behind this for money and profit, and it's working.
It's the thing that I'm focusing on. How is it leaving people, and what is it leading people to accept in their life, and what it is that creates whole brain functioning. That's what I'm focused on actually. So what can we do in the things that you're doing in your life to create whole brain functioning out there? And those of you who become leaders, who already are leaders, the way that you're using your voice so that you're creating whole brain functioning in the people that are listening. Alec?
Oh, my dad used to have a saying when he was a kid, he used to whip us, he'd say, hurt me was going to hurt you, which is not true.
Yes, well, in a way, possibly it was all about hurt. That's true, and Dad probably really did. Yes, but Dad probably really did feel inside himself that his sons, or that he was taking this himself. Anyway, the main thing is the whole thing is about hurt, and the thing that I sense myself is that there's other ways of going about doing something, and the thing is that I don't know anything that a child could do that would be deserving of that myself, because to me, I think if something is uncontrived, that I say that it's like the sky. It's pristine and pure like the sky. It's when something was contrived that maybe something else is there, but I sense that a child especially is in need of our support and is not mature. Like a young dog, for instance, might be jumping all over the place because it's still young. It's not yet learned what it is that we expect of it. And so I think the right way to rear a child is truly to be supportive, as much as you can be supportive, that you are being supportive. And I know that these children are growing up to feel supported very much.
One thing that really aggravates me, if you, for example, in a bookstore, going looking for a book, this kid messing up the books. You don't even know these people. And Mom will say, if you don't stop playing those books, this man is going to really beat the hell out of you, this is the way you know people. That happens all the time. I see, not necessarily me, but I see mothers using other people to discipline their children.
Yes. Well, anyway, the thing about that too is, if a mum could say to the child that these books are in order, sweetie, or whatever, and use a term of endearment, that these books are in order, and that we're in need of seeing if there's a way to put them back in its place, because otherwise how would this man be able to find the book, if it's not in its place, or something like that. And actually it's all about putting it in its place, and then, maybe the child still puts it in another place. Well, eventually the child hopefully will put it in the right place, and that's the learning. And if I go into a bookstore and the book is not in the place, well, I'm accepting of that, because that's nature. One day we came back from doing a training, and I came back to Oklahoma, and Cloud was really upset because she'd arrived back at the ranch, and she went to use some tools and stuff to build something or other, and the tools weren't there. And she was really upset, and she hoed into a couple of people that came back, right, that the tools were not in their place. And anyway, I said to Cloud that for sure one day she was going to come back to the ranch, and absolutely the tools would not be in their place. That's what I said, because that's the truth of the matter. Because we're living with human beings, and may as well grow to accept something and be meeting that energy than to be creating something which is like creating a buffer somewhat, rather than it's a good idea to be accepting of the energy that's coming to you. That's how people can live out in the cold in Australia, right? NASA went over there to find out how the Aboriginals were able to sleep on the ground in 30 below 40 degrees without a stitch of clothing on. Not a single stitch of clothing on, just on the ground, not even a shelter, just like a bit of bark leaned against the tree. And they're perfectly comfortable sleeping on the ground, and so they snuck over there and tried to look to see what was going on. And the one thing that they came back with was just these Aboriginals seem to be accepting of this situation, and as a result of this, it's just their nature. They're not sensing any difference about this.
This is one of the strongest points about the 12 steps of Al-Anon. Many wives of alcoholics are always saying, don't do this, and they spend their energy with the husband just saying, do not drink and all this and that. And Al-Anon just tries to get them to accept the situation and work on themselves. Accept rather than...
Very good, Bruce. That something, there is a technology out there that's being used in some circles, and I think that's wonderful. That's excellent. A good friend of mine, some of you have heard this story before, it's a beauty. A good friend of mine from California got kicked out of his house by his wife. They were having a bit of an argument or something or other, and he got kicked out. And anyway, so here he is lying on the grass, right outside the house, just lying on the grass there, feeling really dejected, right? And my friend said, "There's no way that I'm going to go back inside unless she comes out and asks me back in, right?" So here he was, just lying on the grass there, kind of really feeling dejected, and completely just accepting this idea that he was going to be outside. There was no way that he was going to go back inside unless she would come out and ask him back in, right? Because that she'd kicked him out. And so here he was lying on the grass outside, really feeling dejected, and it's in the middle of winter. And all of a sudden it starts to rain. And he is just lying on the grass there, and it's raining, pelting down, just there's a river of water around him, right? And all of a sudden, he realized something, and he looked up, and here's this steam just pouring off him as he's in the rain here. And all of a sudden, he realized something, that he was perfectly accepting of being in the rain, and that he'd met the energy of the rain. And what was most amazing to him was that he felt perfectly at one out there in the rain. And of course he could feel water getting around his underwear and really kind of getting in his socks and shoes, and like he was completely saturated. And that he had met the energy of the rain, and it was perfectly, he was perfectly feeling fine out there in the rain. And anyway, so eventually, his wife did come out. Right? Yes, no, not at that time. His wife did come out. His wife does come out and sees him lying in the rain there, right? And doesn't say a word to him, just because he's trying not to look. He knows that she's come out and he's just trying not to look, right? And she throws the towel at him, right? And then just walks back up the footpath back into the house and slams the door. And anyway, so here he is lying out there in the rain with his towel. And anyway, so he had never really been very good friends with the cat. And that the cat always had been his wife's pet, majorly. And he just used to say, oh, the cat, like this. And but anyway, what amazing thing, animals, they feel our emotions intensely because they're operating at that level. That's the level that they're operating at. And this cat comes over and lays on my friend's neck, like he's lying on the ground, and this cat lays on his neck and starts purring away. And here's this cat purring away on his neck, And anyway, so this, then he was struck really by the way that this cat was able to pick up what was happening actually, and he really bonded instantly with the cat. So the cat's really, really an excellent thing in his life now. Anyway, his wife did eventually come out and ask him back in, and and everything's fine. All right. So this article, everyone read this article. Was anybody struck by something that was in this article? So this...
Well, David, how much time... I get the impression that you sat with them and watched them tape. Okay, did you see it once?
About 8 times.
About 8 times, okay.
So this leader was using a language like in the tape, we've come a long way, but we've still got a long way to go. Okay, and he's giving this out to his employees. They're the largest employer in the state of Ohio, and here all employees are hearing that this is a work ethic, which is to do with drudgery, that life was meant to be hard and then you die. And so then he would say that there's few guarantees in life, and that life's meant to be hard again. That further restructuring is inevitable. All of these comments to the employees are leading to instability, actually.
So his training tape is basically doing the opposite of what he wants.
Yes, exactly. And everybody's seeing this person as a dictator in a way, which he is, autocratic dictator kind of style of leadership, and so...
Is it the opposite of what he wanted? Did he want his new employees to feel real secure, or did he want them to feel really insecure? This obviously sets up total insecurity.
Yes, his employees are feeling insecure. The company is in a process of I would say, reshaping itself. He would say cutting departments out. He would use a language like that, so everybody's, It's like when the military left Lebanon, right? They didn't say that we're pulling out. They said that we're redeploying. Okay. So in the 7 shared basic values, within this training tape, this leader would say something about, and there's not going to be any more finger pointing. This finger pointing and complaining, and no more backstabbing. Right? and I want this one-upmanship to start to disappear. All right? It's all about one-upmanship disappearing and going out the window. He is using a language like this, and everybody is accessing what the meaning of this is, the way that this has been occurring, in the company.
Well, one question I had, David, was the film itself something that you could use and just change the language, or did the film actually was unusable relative to changing the language? Oh
yes, the film was unusable. There were some pieces in it that really elicited happiness and resourcefulness, but basically it was really like, life's meant to be hard and then you die.
Did you tell him that?
Yes. In this I have told him that, yes, as I've gone through it.
Those words that you just used.
Yes. In other words, what I've said is that what I told him was to use a language that would create whole brain functioning and create resourcefulness in those people that are listening, so that the directives that he's embedding are easily remembered, and the employees have the ability to use these. Right? Those 8 frames of excellence, those corporate 8 frames of excellence, would allow him to embed these directives in a way that these people were easily able to remember the meaning of the communication. So, for instance, he would use another meta program of prioritizing. Quite possibly tomorrow, I think, we are going to be talking about meta programs, the ways people sort information. And this is really this will be an excellent discussion and very valuable to you in listening to the way people are sorting information, whether somebody's moving towards something or whether they're moving away from something. You can get an idea of whether a person's a toward person or an away from. If they're an away from, then they're bound to be dissociated in various things that they're doing in their job, rather than being associated, moving towards something. So,
page 99.
Yeah.
It says you change the language. And you said, if you believe this, or you will become the winner. You change it to, as we believe this, we are winning.
Yes.
I was wondering if, as we believe this, we are winners. That would harmonize a little bit more with what he had originally said.
Okay, so winners is putting it out there. Winning, ing, is making a movie.
Yeah.
Winners is like having it be, separate frames.
It would be more congruent than to say, believing this.
Say it again.
Believing this, yes. We are winning.
We are winning. Believing this, we are winning. Yes, that would be good. The main thing that I wanted to show here with my language was using a verb tense which was placing it into the present, because what he said was, when you believe this, right. Okay, meaning that it's possible that you're not believing it now.
Shouldn't imply that they're not believing. You should assume the fact that they believe exactly.
Yes, that's another technique which is involving the assumption that something has taken place for something else to occur. This is an excellent technique that we will be learning this in hypnosis, use of language.
Another point you could bring out, when you use the word win, you also imply that the way we program now that it is a loser. But you can also imply that you win, everybody wins. There's no loser. Win.
Yes. Anyway, winning always has the polar opposite with it, losing. Like right elicits, the reason why somebody would say right is because there's a possibility of something being wrong. Okay, so we always enter into that a little, when we use a language like that. However, possibly there's places where you can use that word winning for sure. Okay, so we were the phone company was one time when he really highlighted a moment when there was this destruction all around and everybody really rallied and worked 13, 16-hour days, to kind of clean up this mess. And this president was saying, we were the phone company then, and I said to him, well then what are we now? We are the phone company, because if we were the phone company, that's really meaning that we're not the phone company at the present moment. So, using your verb tense to support the changes that take place in your life. If there was something that you were in need of bringing up that's to do with something you want to pace further away from yourself, then using verb tense to pace it further away. I was feeling, right, rather than when I feel, or in feeling, and then the person says something that they're feeling actually. Putting it in the past, using your verb tense to support the change work that's occurring is like gold to the people that you're around. And that's often what I'm doing actually. When I'm working with someone, I'm using verb tense and things like this to sort the information for the person, like they would be doing inside their brain. So somebody says, well, when I get up in front of the group and I go to speak, I start to feel like I'm losing my breath. Okay, so then the person finishes talking. Right, so I might say, well, in the past when you've got up in front of a group, I sense the ease with which I've sensed that you may have had some difficulty. So that what I've done is I've paced the whole experience and put it in the past. If I do this, what I'm doing is creating the possibility of movement for the person. So I'm pacing the difficulty that they've had, and I've used verb tense which has completely put it in the past, presupposing now that it is in the past, and that this dynamic is like an equation that's being put into the brain. All of these words are.
Would you follow through with future pacing?
Oh yes, I would work with the person. And say, well, that's really excellent that you are focusing on your breath. Okay, if I said, oh, that's excellent that you focused, that's not as strong, right? Because that's kind of using verb tense to put it away from the person. But if I said, oh, I think that's excellent that you are focusing now on your breath, that by focusing on your breath and allowing the breath to be easy, you're going to have access to your feelings and the use of your brain. You are having access to the use of your brain as a result of having access to your feelings. Okay, so that's pacing it really right into the present moment with the language. So the person is living the words. Okay, so verb tense is very important. If you have the ability to be able to use the person's name to personalise something, then I think that's excellent rather than saying you. Because you as a pronoun used in a possessive, separates self from what it is that you're talking about, creates distance. And whereas saying the person's name, Penny, Richard, personalises with what it is that's said, and we love to hear our name. So using a word like this, if for something that's you would enjoy bringing close to you, or that as a word is creating distance, right? So if you want to create distance with something, that you can say that, and you can really move something further away from the person, or you can use the word this, and you can bring whatever it is that you're saying in closer to the person.
David, are you always probably unconscious now, and are you always accentuating it with your own body language in terms of whenever you say that, you're always saying that, and when you say this, your hands are always...
Yes, the reason why I did that was because because the movements are taking you a little bit more into your right brain. These movements, all of these movements, this creates a degree of trance whilst I'm speaking, and because it's taking you into the visual sense, and it's creating a combination of the kinesthetic self in understanding whilst I'm occupying the auditory self. So this is creating a degree of trance. And the main thing is that memory of that and the movement and this is unmistakable. Okay, so a leader always comes from amongst the people. This is the most advantageous position to occupy. We love it when our leader is coming from the people. We love it. We love this type of leadership.
How do you explain a guy like this?
Just in the same way that, our government here has been responsible for the death of thousands of people in the name of something which is about a higher ideal, apparently, than human life. And that in Germany, the settlement in the First World War that occurred left Germany bankrupt, and there was no way out for these people. Nobody stopped to think about what this country was inheriting after the First World War. What they inherited was something which was grossly impoverished, intensely. Their country was divided, boundaries were drawn up where families could no longer visit each other. A whole slew of stuff which was not about good relations at all was created. And there was an honouring of war as a mechanism of going about change. There was war movies, and there was a great honouring of war as a way, like Rambo, as a way of settling scores.
Revenge.
And everybody was blindly following the establishment because that's the way their culture was set up. And so people were led to believe that some people are bad. And of course Hitler grew up with Darwinism, with a flavour of Darwinism, which is a shame, because Darwin said this and it left people with a kind of incomplete understanding of evolution. Darwin used this theory of the survival of the fittest, and this is untrue. This is false. Those organisms that are still around today are the organisms that lived completely in harmony with their environment. This is the best way to interpret Darwinism, not this other way, that it's the survival of the fittest. That's bull dust. That's all about something not surviving. And it's truly those things that are still around here today are still around because they've totally, completely fitted into their environment.
He also had a history encoded in his brain of paternal rejection as a child.
But anyway, somebody can be a manic depressant, right? And how is it that the question was actually asked, how was it that people blindly followed this person all the way to the last moment when everybody realised the dire straits of the country? Everybody realised, the Germans realised the dire straits that they had got themselves into. And everybody right to the last moment still followed the Führer, their leader. So sometimes people are doing things absolutely blindly. They are being asked to do something and people are going and doing that. And we really need to take a fresh look at the things that are around us. And for there to be a language that's a language of peace and a language of inclusion. So that this first thing I think that's our understanding is that us and them and those people, all of this is an illusion. This is an illusion. This is the most transient thing that you can imagine.
And Hitler did come from the people.
Yes, right. That's right. Okay. All right. It would be a good idea for you to make sure that you've read through a little bit of that the technique that I've written for this man, the technique of how he would go about creating atmosphere in that. Let's take a small break here now for 5 minutes and kind of looking down at yourself doing something. This is the indication that you were dissociated in that moment at the party. And if the party that you went back to, you could see your hands kind of doing things and you could see other people, this is an indication that you're associated. Most people, when they take the ride at Coney Island or something like this ride, are associated. When you ask them to remember that, they'll see themselves, in this thing. They won't see themselves out there looking at themselves generally, because the stimulus, it really is asking people to be really kind of associated in themselves. So association is meaning a movement toward and within, and dissociation is a movement away and without. So away and without are similar words as dissociation, and within and toward are similar words that you can use with association. Okay? We're going to be learning techniques of dissociating the person. So for instance, if someone had a frightening experience which left them traumatized, so now whenever they see the memory they still feel traumatized, then it would be important that you have the ability, with your technique, to be able to dissociate the person. So you could say, well, can you see this in black and white? So that's partly dissociation, because when you're associated, you really are seeing in colour. You really are seeing in full bright colour. So making it black and white, the person starts to lose some of their feeling about what they're seeing. Moving it further away, or bringing something toward the person, that's really something they're in need of associating to. Making a movie of the picture and seeing myself watch the picture. That's, to be able to do this, what I've got to do is I've got to step back outside myself in my mind to see myself there watching the picture. And then, and now, the more that I would dissociate somebody, like let's say for pain, and maybe I can demonstrate this in the next days that are to come. We'll demonstrate this, how you can use a distraction technique. So it's the person doing several things and then you do something and the person's not aware of it at all. And this is a technique of dissociating the person away from the thing that you want to do, so that you can avoid conscious objection. If there was a need to input something, and ordinarily the person would be consciously objecting to that, then you can use techniques of dissociating the person away from this thought that you're going to be doing something, actually. Okay. Everybody read the article on whole brain functioning in the front of the technician's manual, yes? And you read the philosophy and the statement of need. Okay, and the language of peace, which kind of went over everything a little. And the ionophoric theory, which helped wire in this understanding of what the ionophoric theory is about. And now everybody turn to the second section of the technician's manual up to page 12, and the title of it is Whole Brain Functioning. The very first distinction there that is something that we are teaching that our thoughts and our words and our behaviour has a direct and specific physiology, and that the major amount of electrical activity that's happening in the brain is proprioceptive. Does everybody know what proprioception is?
What proprioception?
Proprioception. Proprioception is body movement in space. So the major amount of electrical activity that's occurring in the brain is involving how my body is sensing gravity. the major amount of electrical activity that's occurring in the brain is proprioceptive, body movement in space. Movement happens to be the broadest pathway for programming the nervous system. So that you would take it directly to something the person was feeling, the structure of something that the person is feeling. Actually, that's to do with movement, because even our language is actually patterned motor movement. You are able to understand this because of the movements that my muscles are making to create the sound you are familiar with. When you hear the sound, it's reminding you of the physiology that you yourself would make. And so that language is actually patterned motor movement. That's what language is. So movement happens to be the broadest pathway for programming the nervous system, and that's why we are using these elements out here. And that's why there's such a focus on body language, to shape the person's analog so that they can have the state-specific behaviour.
Hey, isn't it the only movement? What other movements are there?
Yes. No, it's also
You say it's the broadest movement.
Broadest pathway. It's the broadest pathway for programming the brain.
What other pathways are there?
A focus on the psyche is using language. However, last night in the car, Johnny was mentioning an example of someone who was feeling something, and so then what I asked was, how are you feeling this? And the person said, oh well, I feel scared. And then I said, how do you feel scared? And the person says, well, I just kind of feel upset. So now I'm starting to get a little bit of information. The person's using the vestibular system up, meaning that they're kind of not connected with the ground. Okay, they're feeling dissociated from the ground. And then I get more information. The person says, well, I kind of feel like my throat starts to tighten up. So now I know that there's something in auditory, and that this person's throat, this is part of the sequence. Or someone's got an agoraphobia, and I say, well, how do you get this? What I'm really taking it back to as a technician is what is the structure of this, not the content. Not that this person, somebody comes over, at a certain time or something other. Maybe that's part of the structure of it. But anyway, the main thing is that the content is not important. It's the structure that's important. So, for instance, if it's a log suspended by cables, and it's free to rock this way, it's free to rock this way, and it's 30 feet long, and now each of us here are going to be focused on the structure, and I'm going to be talking about somebody walking across a log, which is the content. We could be talking about anything in the content, and it's possible that it would have this structure. And the structure is that a person gets up there, right, and they have great difficulty letting go of their base of support before they venture out across the log. Now, somebody's watching and they're thinking that it's just somebody crossing the log, but there's a structure to the way the person crosses the log, and this is the way we're using these elements, and this is what we're going to be teaching you in the practitioner's training, to access the structure. So some people that are there in a spotting activity, some people are standing there flat, and you can see that they really haven't supported. They haven't been in a support position in a family, because somebody who's been in a support position in a family, you'll notice this person gets down there and they're ready to support you if you're in need of that. And so some people kind of won't take any help from anybody else. They want to do it themselves. They'll walk a little bit and fall and get back on the log, and walk a little bit and fall and get back, and walk a little bit and fall, until eventually somebody says, well, maybe you could take just a little bit of support. And I would say there's the possibility of this being a structure in a person's life, actually, that when they're really in need of support, when they could take a little bit of support, they've had a program running where they want to do it themselves. And this may not be as elegant a program. Or the person who's walking across a log and their eyes are focused up there. and they're walking across the log with their eyes focused up there. What I know is if somebody's eyes are focused up there, that, you know, we go where our eyes are focused because our eyes lead our behaviour. We'll do an exercise where you are learning how important the movement of the eyes are in the things that we do. Anyway, so the main thing is that some time ago, you know, when you were really small in the land of the giants and you were looking up like this, right, into the land of the giants, you spent a long time looking up like this into the land of the giants. And so this is a physiology reminding us, in fact, of being small ourselves in comparison to something that we're looking at, which is larger. So this would be an indication of the person walking across the log like this, right, that they're feeling smaller than the task at hand. Or, you know, another type of pattern interruption that's running in the nervous system is when somebody's running a pattern like they've forgotten something. Because if you hear those words in your brain,